Let's get away from Neil Sedaka. Let's get away from all that.
Uh-huh.
And this is your show. Why am I going anywhere?
I was going to let you. I was just waiting to see where you led the fine folks. I understand that our favorite uncle, Uncle Dave Meltzer, has published a new publication where he has recapped some of his writings from 40 years ago for the modern audience. 1984, not George Orwell, ladies and gentlemen, but Dave Meltzer. And for those of us, again, old enough to remember Neil Sedaka and when Meltzer made sense, he's always been a bit sarcastic. He'll take the out of somebody. But under normal circumstances, years ago, it seemed like he had kind of a more level head than he does today. But basically what I'm trying to say is now apparently some of his, I don't want to say predictions, but his comments on some of the talent back then may not have aged as well or proven to be as perceptive as he might have thought back then. Have I encapsulated this properly, Brian?
I think so. The Wrestling Observer has been putting out collections available on Amazon of entire years' worth of issues together. So not just a collection of the writings, with the exception of the reader's page, swap and sell market. Everything else is in there.
I remember that.
Yeah, so you're not going to get like, Joe in Arkansas is looking for Tracy Lord's video. Yeah, of course he is. He's a pervert. So that stuff's not there, but you get everything else. And considering the way Dave's had a problem with the way you look at some of his favorites, and considering how he doesn't really share as much of his opinions about bad stuff, especially when it involves his friends, and he has more friends in wrestling today than he did in 1984.
Well, kids, remember we've said, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we have talked about before that Dave, of all people, talking about, the negativity, when he used to just take the piss out of a variety of people. He called JYD junk food dog, the anabolic warrior. I mean, he was taking the piss out of people before it was fashionable.
Well, right here I have, for instance, from the March 1984 issue of The Observer. This is a mild one, but one last note. Lots of people say bad things about the USFL, but I will never do such a thing. The reason is that any organization which can keep Steve Williams out of pro wrestling is fine with me. I wish Dr. Death the best of luck with the Denver Gold, or at least enough luck to make the team. So again, a young wrestler developing away. In a few years, he would be a legend. But Dave wanted him
and one of the all-time greats and most sought-after American stars to be booked in Dave's native Japan in 4 years from that point.
Yeah.
So and Doc, he'd been working. Did Doc start in late 82 or was it early 83?
No, it was 82. He did he was there for maybe a month or two, and then he went back to school.
That's right, because he was finishing up school, and he came back in 83 when so he had 6 months. What the fuck? Well.
That's one example. Here's another one. This is from June of 84. Let me see the exact thing I must have marked here. Oh, this is talking about the last Stampede. Actually. The bout I saw had a lot of action, but Watts looked just pathetic. With his shattered kneecap and a pulled muscle in the same leg, making him limp too noticeably.
Wait a minute, shattered kneecap. Remind me to come back to that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Making him limp much too noticeably for any believability. As it was, he used his tape fist to bloody both foes up quick and pulverized them most of the way. Dog, or Lee, was only in the ring for about 90 seconds of a 20-minute bout. To say I have no respect for Dog's work rate or wrestling skill would be giving Dog too much credit. All he did was kiss Cornette. So that's a review of one of the last Stampede matches.
It was the big pop of the night. Watts didn't have a shattered kneecap. He had torn his hamstring. And Dennis used to joke that he tore his hamstring kicking Bobby and Dennis in the head, which is what he did in one of the, because Watts hadn't worked in like 3 years, and all of a sudden he has, what was it, 14 matches in a month. And on one of the fucking spots he did, he would kick the guys in the head for them to get their color. And he kicked and tore his hamstring, so he had to tape it up, and there was no, you couldn't substitute, right, for Bill Watts. That was the whole draw, the whole point of him coming out of retirement, one time only. So he wrapped his leg up, and we got by with it because the Midnight just fed him, and he kicked the shit out of them, beat them both bloody, beat them. And as we've mentioned, stripped me down and either fed me the bottle and put me in the diaper or the pink dress or whatever stipulation was. And I tell you, I have to kind of agree with Dave there about Dog, because that was Dog's last little bit in Mid-South when he was having his troubles, and he was just not really there sometimes. So unfortunately, I have to say that one there may be something to that.
From July 30th, 1984, the issue of The Observer, that is, Fulton and Rogers are called the Fantastics and come out to ZZ Top's Sharp-Dressed Man. They are so obvious as Morton Gibson replacements, and I don't think it will work. For one thing, Fulton and Rogers are simply terrible as a team.
What?
While Morton and Gibson were very good.
What in the world?
Fulton can only pretend he's Bill Dundee, while Rogers knows nothing but how to drop kick.
Wow.
They messed up so many maneuvers the first time I saw them, it was pitiful. Being there is no justice in wrestling, these two clowns will probably beat Condrey and Eaton for the tag titles shortly. The PYT Express has also arrived. At least Coco can work well with Eaton and Condrey.
Oh, boy.
So we stop there. I've never heard the Fantastics shredded like that before.
And again, in 3 years, they're going to be touring regularly for Baba in Japan. The following year, they're going to go, not even the following year, same year, they're going to go to World Class and get over like crazy in Dallas as the other pretty boy alternatives to the Von Erichs. The UWF run, and then they're going to come in 4 years from the time that Dave wrote that and have what was voted in Dave's own publication the tag team match of the year, and are going to be involved in the match that Dave said was here when FTR worked with Robinson and Light Switch. Said that was the best tag team match since the Midnight Express and the Fantastics on television 30 years ago or whatever. So, boy, his eye for talent is not shining through, is it?
Did you ever think Tommy Rogers could only do drop kicks?
No, Tommy Rogers could make me look good. Tommy's work was incredible. He could go up for a slam like you were picking up a fucking styrofoam cup. He could do shit and never touch you, and it looked like it knocked your head off. He was so athletic in every facet, and I can't imagine. Tommy was probably the better athletic worker than Bobby. Even though Bobby had been a pro since he was 16, but Bobby was probably the better psychological worker than Tommy.
All he could do was impersonate Bill Dundee, according to this.
Oh, good Lord. He's getting that because Bobby, when he became one of the Fantastics, he picked up Dundee's hip wiggle. That all the girls would go, when he'd do something and hot dog about it. That's the only thing he did like Dundee.
Here's a review from the June 16th Superdome show. The other main draw on the card saw a tag title bout with no DQ, sending the Midnight Express against Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, the Rock and Rollers, with Jim Duggan handcuffed to Jim Cornette. The bout was pretty good, but the ending was typical Watts. Brilliant, yet almost believable. Hold on. That's a little weird there. The bout was pretty good, but the ending was typical Watts. That makes it sound like it's about to turn negative.
Yeah.
Brilliant, yet almost believable.
But then it's good, but not quite good again. Okay, I'm not sure whether he likes it or not. Go on.
Watts, for a few weeks, had for some unknown reason suddenly began planting ideas that Duggan was a ladies' man. Anyway, a nice-looking lady in a short skirt comes to ringside and kisses Duggan. Then Cornette starts to run. Duggan pulls Cornette down, turns his back on the girl, Wendy Richter, whom Watts refers to as a modern-day Delilah, who sprays ether on a cloth and puts Big Jim to sleep with a smother hold. Amidst the confusion, Eaton gets Cornette's tennis racket with a horseshoe inside and clobbers Morton, leading to the pin. All right, that's kind of what happened.
Yes, and I still don't know whether he liked it or not.
After a big high comes a new low. Most main events upcoming involve tag matches with the Dog and Sonny King, who is awful, even worse than the Dog, against Reed and Ladd. I shudder to think about these bouts.
I shudder. I shudder the thought. And he was right again there, but at least he would admit it when shit was going to be kind of bad.
Let me go. I have another one here, Jim. This is from November 12th, 84, so this is later in the year. Booker Bill Dundee has started appearing in prelims. I figure he'll feud with Street. Dundee doesn't look as bad as I expected, nor does Street. Don't confuse the facts, though. Neither is good.
What? Oh, well, don't confuse the fact neither is good. So Dundee, who had just...
83 was like one of his best years.
Well, yes, not only the heel run where his promos were so good, but also he'd had the best fucking match that I'd ever seen in my life with Jerry Lawler on the way out in front of a sold-out Mid-South Coliseum. And then he's booked a record fucking year in Mid-South Wrestling, but he's not any good. And Adrian Street. Okay.
But again, I guess that goes to... Even today, what does Dave look for in a wrestler that he champions, that he supports, that he likes? Adrian Street wasn't wrestling a Japanese-style match. He did really cool stuff in the ring, and people were into his matches, and it was a gimmick that worked wherever he went. So, I mean, how do you say in 83, 84, how do you say that's not good?
Well, but within Dundee, complete opposite. Dundee was the first American, he wasn't an American, but he was the first person I saw in America to head first dive through the ropes and tackle a motherfucker. And it looked like he was mad and he wanted to get to him and he couldn't wait. But all of the flying shit that Dundee did, Barnes and Dundee were fucking the biggest bump takers you'd ever seen. Over the top, off the top. All the shit he was doing, that he doesn't like that. He doesn't like Adrian Street. He doesn't like Dog. He doesn't like the Fantastics. We're all over the fucking page here.
Well, one final one here this week. This is from December 3rd, 1984 in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Why did I hold this one? Oh, apparently Akbar will definitely be arriving here as manager at DiBiase and Buddy Landel, one of the most underrated and improved guys around. This sets up the natural feud, since DiBiase attacked Duggan, and Reed and Landel were partners for so long, and Reed's known to hate Arabs. They showed Reed whipping the Iron Sheik on TV some weeks back, and Duggan's original turning babyface was because of Akbar. Oh no, now I'm thinking like Bill Watts. Because earlier in here, he wrote something... I'm not sure about how they are working the Reed transition. The grammar here is off. Their talk they may bring in Skandar Akbar to Reed and Duggan can have a foe in the Super Patriot skit.
What the fuck did you just say?
That's verbatim. Their talk they may bring in Skandar Akbar to Reed and Duggan can have a foe in the Super Patriot skit. Haven't these promoters gotten tired of running that garbage? I know many fans get into it, but at least 40% of the population at large finds that stuff revolting.
And wait a minute now, is that from Quinnipiac, or where did he get that 40% statistic?
And they are turning off a lot of fans by overdoing that angle. And I'll leave you with the final thing here, we'll discuss this. If Akbar left Dallas for Mid-South, what if Jim Cornette left Mid-South for Dallas?
Yeah, so that's who I've got to blame. Fucking, we already had the spot with Crockett. Everything was fine. And then Watts got that in the mail and said, oh, shit, you know what? That's where we should have sent him.
He was talking to that office. That was one of the only offices actually dealing with Dave around that period of time. You have to wonder if they said something to him.
It was Joel. Joel Watts was dealing with him because Joel Watts was the one that was designated to speak to people most of the time.
So he may have known that you were about to go to Dallas, but the idea, you know, I can understand not wanting something that was done in not almost every territory, but a lot of major high-profile ones. The idea of a Arabian wrestler, a sheik coming and buying American talent. The AWA did it. Ken Patera became a sheik. Jerry Blackwell became a sheik. WWF,
Yeah.
Fred Blassie became Ayatollah Blassie all of a sudden when he managed the Iron Sheik. And of course, Skandar Akbar had been doing this in Mid-South for a while.
Yeah, he's been doing it since the fucking 70s, early 70s.
The idea that 40% of the population at large, not even casual fans, just anyone in the world, would be turned off to them having Skandar Akbar in 1984 trying to purchase American wrestlers and manage them. What do you think of that? And again, when you look at Dave's arguments all these years later about when people like us say that things on AEW specifically turn people off, and then it turns people off, and it gets denied. I mean, it's almost like he saw things one way when he wasn't a fan of someone, and it sees things another way when he is a fan of them.
Well, he saw things a lot differently when he was a fan, and he's still pretty much a fan. His tastes have changed. But I agree, Akbar. How's he going to follow Cornette? No, the people knew who Akbar was, and they knew what the deal was. And all of the, for instances that you just elicited with Patera and Blackwell and all the people becoming sheiks and ayatollahs and things, that was in all different territories, and nobody except Dave and me at the time probably was watching every goddamn thing because there were still so many television shows to watch.
When did you first hear work rate? I mean, I'm reading this right here. This is from December 3rd, 84, talking about the Cotton Bowl show in October. I've seen most of the card as I write this. The work rate throughout was pretty good, and execution, for the most part, was so-so, but the bouts were exciting. When did you first hear the term work rate?
Well, probably from reading Dave Meltzer's writings, because that's not a wrestling term at all. It never has been. But Dave's, I think, was the first one to start that. Other people would just say, well, it's kind of exciting or kind of slow or, you know, whatever. But work rate became his go-to thing to describe the in-ring action.
Well, there they are, some of the 1984 thoughts on specifically Mid-South Wrestling and whatever he thought about wrestling in 1984 in the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
But now the rotten stuff gets 3.5 stars, and then the real good stuff gets 4 3/4, and the great stuff gets 7.5.
You know why a book like this is something I like beyond making fun of it like this? I like anything that documents how crazy 1984 was for Vince. Just every month it's like, look who's here, look who's not here anymore, people coming in and out. It's insane. And, you know, again, you see some of the reporting here, and you wonder how much of it holds up when he says that the Minnesota crew, the DeRushas, were going home because George Scott was taking control, and you could tell how much better George Scott is than Vince McMahon at handling all the day-to-day things. Very interesting stuff here.